All right, let's dive right into today's explainer and look at a truly ancient text that masterfully contrasts profound human distress with this ultimate hope for protection. We're going to be unpacking Psalm 5, which is a piece of literature that has literally been read, sung, and studied for millennia. And, what's so captivating about this specific piece of writing is just how raw and real it is. It really doesn't shy away from the dark, anxious parts of the human experience, but it also provides this fascinating roadmap from absolute fear to total confidence. So, whether you're approaching this as a theological text or simply as a brilliant piece of ancient poetry, there is just a wealth of emotion and structure for us to uncover here.
For our exploration today, we're grounding our analysis in the English Standard Version of Psalm 5. We're really treating this text as an incredible historical and literary artifact. And notice how the text is actually formatted, not as a standard paragraph, but as stanzas. This is poetry through and through. It's meant to be felt just as much as it's meant to be understood. You can tell the author is just pouring out their heart, dealing with threats, deceit, and this really desperate need for a safe path forward. To truly understand this poem's emotional arc, we're going to follow 5 key transitions. First up is the morning cry, then rejecting the wicked, seeking the righteous path, the anatomy of deceit, and finally, the shield of favor.
Now, what's absolutely fascinating right off the bat is this introductory note at the very top of the text. Before the poem even begins, we basically get a stage direction to the choir master, for the flutes, a psalm of David. It completely changes how we should consume these words, doesn't it? These aren't just private thoughts jotted down in a diary somewhere. These were originally ancient lyrics. They were designed to be sung out loud, accompanied by the specific and probably pretty haunting melody of wind instruments. It's a great reminder that this was a shared communal expression of emotion.
So let's start with our first theme, the morning cry, which is this incredibly intimate plea. The text opens up with an intensely personal, almost desperate cry. The narrator says, "Give ear to my words, O Lord, consider my groaning." And that word groaning is just so evocative. It establishes this highly personal, vulnerable connection right in the quiet, early hours of the day. The author isn't just offering up a polite greeting. They are crying out for attention from their king and their God. They state, "In the morning you hear my voice," which sets up this daily rhythm of seeking guidance before the chaos of the day even begins.
But here's where it gets really interesting. If we look closely at the source text, there's a fascinating footnote about that morning routine. The English Standard Version translates verse 3 as, "I prepare a sacrifice for you and watch." But the footnote reveals an alternate understanding of the ancient language, translating it to, "I direct my prayer to you." This perfectly shows us how translating ancient words can reveal such incredible nuances. The act of morning devotion could be understood as a physical, ritual sacrifice, or it could be a deeply focused, directed prayer. Either way, the narrator is deliberately preparing something and then watching. They're waiting in intense anticipation for a response.
And that brings us right into section 2, rejecting the wicked, where we see a massive escalation of tension. From that quiet, expectant morning devotion, the focus shifts dramatically from the narrator's inner world to a really dangerous outer world. In verses 4 through 6, the poem outlines exactly who cannot dwell with a righteous God. And man, the language is uncompromising. The text moves from the generally annoying boastful to all evildoers, escalating even further to those who speak lies, and finally lands on the most severe threat, the bloodthirsty and deceitful man. The author is setting up a stark, black and white boundary here. In the narrator's worldview, the divine explicitly hates and destroys this kind of corruption. Which leads us to our third theme, seeking the righteous path. And guys, this is the crucial pivot of the whole piece. We hit this massive thematic pivot in verse 7, but I. Let's just pause on those 2 words for a second. This brilliantly illustrates the turning point of the entire poem. After looking outward at the terrifying reality of the deceitful and bloodthirsty, the narrator snaps the focus straight back inward, sharply contrasting themselves against those enemies. Now, you might expect the narrator to follow up by listing all their own good deeds to prove they belong, right? But they don't. They say, "But I, through the abundance of your steadfast love, will enter your house." So the crucial point here is that they ground their confidence and their access to safety, not in their own perfection, but entirely in the abundance of steadfast divine love. Let's see how this builds into the core request of the text. In verse 8, the narrator asks, "Lead me, O Lord, in your righteousness because of my enemies. Make your way straight before me." Notice that they aren't asking for an easy life. They're specifically asking for a straight, clear path because of the looming, confusing threat of their enemies.
The world around them is completely twisted by the lies we mentioned earlier, so they desperately need a path that is straight and true.
So who exactly are these enemies causing so much anxiety? That takes us to section 4, the anatomy of deceit. And the visceral imagery here is just wild.
The text gives us this shockingly visceral breakdown of a deceitful person. The imagery in verse 9 is incredible. Their throat is an open grave. They flatter with their tongue. I mean, this is perhaps the most striking metaphor in the entire text. Think about what an open grave actually represents. It's a hidden hazard, it's hollow, it consumes, and it ultimately signifies death and decay. The author is essentially saying that while these enemies might be flattering you with smooth, nice-sounding words, the ultimate destination of their speech is total destruction. It captures an anxiety about flattery and hidden danger that feels incredibly relatable even today. I'm sure we've all dealt with someone whose words were sweet, but whose intentions were toxic, right? This 3,000-year-old text nails that exact feeling perfectly.
The author systematically describes a complete, inside-out corruption of speech and intention. The text breaks it down like this. There's no truth in their mouth, their very inmost self is destruction, the throat is an open grave, and they use their tongue to flatter. It is a complete anatomical takeover by deceit. And because of this overwhelming corruption, the narrator pleads in verse 10 for justice, asking that God make them bear their guilt, let them fall by their own counsels, and basically cast them out for their abundance of transgressions and rebellion.
Finally, we hit section 5, the shield of favor. This is where we find our resolution and hope. After all that dark, intense exploration of deceit and judgment, we finally get this beautiful, soaring expression of hope. In stark contrast to the destruction and casting out of the deceitful, verses 11 and 12 offer an overflowing list of joys for those who take refuge. Notice the major shift in tone here. We go from groaning and watching in the morning to a community that will ever sing for joy. They receive a spread of protection, and they exult in the divine name. It's just a complete emotional turnaround from the beginning of the text. So the crucial point of this entire thematic journey culminates right here, and it is a total masterclass in poetic contrast. On one side, you've got the terrifying, consuming, hidden open grave of a liar's throat. It literally threatens to pull you down into darkness. But on the exact opposite side, you have the final image of the poem. For you bless the righteous, O Lord. You cover him with favor as with a shield. An open grave pulls you in, a shield violently repels the attack, keeping you safe on the surface. The poem moves the reader all the way from the vulnerability of that morning groan, right behind an impenetrable divine shield.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to consider this. How does a 3,000-year-old cry for a straight path still echo in your own life today? Because the truth is, we still face hidden hazards. We absolutely still encounter flattery that masks toxic intentions, and we still deeply desire a shield of truth. Psalm 5 reminds us that the human desire to be led in a righteous, straight path, away from the open graves of deceit and behind a shield of favor, is a timeless, beautiful cry. Thank you so much for exploring this incredible text with me today. Keep seeking and keep asking the big questions.